Welcome to the Kimberly Cloud Show. I'm your host, Kimberly Cloud. I have a very special guest for the show today. Can you go ahead and announce to the world who you are and where you're calling from?
Me?
Yes, you.
My name is Doug Crowe. I'm calling you from Charleston, South Carolina.
Cool. Oh my God, Charleston is a wonderful place. So thank you for joining my show. I just wanted to dig into your past, whatever you want to talk about in your past, leading up to what you do now.
Sure. I've got a pretty dynamic past, I suppose, for a lot of people. Been to like 45 countries, traveled all 7 continents, including Antarctica. Business-wise, I spent a lot of time in the media and real estate investing. I had a radio show on ABC Radio in Chicago on real estate. I was a developer. I had a school that I founded on teaching real estate investing. And then in 2008, everything kind of went down the toilet. And during my little boohoo phase, I wrote a book about it. And the book was awful. So I went back to some of my guests I had in the show and asked them, how'd you get this book done? And people like, Laurel Langmeyer, Robert Kiyosaki, they told me, we're best-selling authors. We're not best-selling writers. I'm like, what's the difference? And I figured out a lot of people use ghostwriters or at least developmental editors. So my company now, Author Your Brand, does ghostwriting and publishing for CEOs, founders, and business owners to help them get their brand voice established, a personal brand out there, get them on TEDx stages, other media channels, and help them grow their personal brand, really.
Well said. And do you know how much are the prices for people like entrepreneurs? Are they affordable?
It's affordable if you're a successful business owner. You've got stuff going on. It works really well. It's generally around 5 figures or so to work with us. A startup person. Quite frankly, I've had plenty of calls talking to someone just the first, second year in business, and maybe they're doing $100,000 or something. I'm like, hey, that's great. You don't need a book yet. You need a book when you're at that you've got your growth stage. But as soon as you're like really starting to move, it's a really good time to work on your personal brand. But the first year or two of business, just get some clients. You don't need a book to do that. You just need a telephone and something interesting or useful to sell and market.
Wow. Well said. So tell me, we're going to kind of rewind. I'm going to go thoroughly over your bio. You told me that you won a Dale Carnegie Highest Achievement Award in high school. Tell me about that and how you felt.
Oh my gosh. So, high school is very formative years, right? You're either a jock, you're a nerd, you're awkward or whatever. I was none of those things. I was kind of just a nobody. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't good in sports. I played in the band and whatnot. But I was in Junior Achievement, which is a great nonprofit organization that teaches kids some fundamental things about business. When you join your Junior Achievement, when I was in it, you actually created a company, sold stock, made a product, sold it, and actually liquidated the company. So I went through this course. It was wonderful, great education. And one of the perks of it was giving me a free enrollment into the Dale Carnegie course in human relations and public speaking. So when I went through that, I found my voice. I increased my confidence. I read more books about personal development, and my personality, my whole whoever I was, really shifted quite a bit. I became class president, homecoming king, won these awards, big man on campus back in the day when you're 18. It's, not a big deal, but it was then. So it was a lot of fun. I learned how to communicate better, how to relate to people, how to market, how to connect, how to sell, all through interpersonal communication, which is talked about today as a soft skill. In my opinion, it's the core skill. It's very important to understand how to talk with people.
Okay. And tell me about your radio personality skills and what station, because you already explained what stations you were on, but how did that work? How long did you do it? And what did you learn from it?
It was a great ride. When I had my real estate training company, I was teaching people how to buy and sell real estate as an investment. And there's a good backstory of that. So remind me to come back to that in a second. But as we're growing that company, we had an outbound call center. Like, oh gosh, cold calling people. You want to learn how to invest in real estate? And I hated it. No one likes getting telemarketing calls. But we still do it because it kind of works. But one year I told my staff, I said, you know what, I'm kind of sick of this outbound calls. Can we, you know what, forget it. I'm going to tell you guys, I want you to take 12 months, 1 year to do this. But I want all of our marketing, instead of being outbound, I want it inbound. I want people to call us. Elevator status, had them call us. And it was a big shift from a marketing perspective. They did it in 6 months because of the radio. Because I went and talked to a couple of radio stations in Chicago and started off on WIND, which is the smaller AM station there, the second biggest one in Chicago. Was there for about a year or so, and then moved over to WLS, which is a monster. It's picked up by 3 states from the Chicago area. It's an ABC radio station. And I did that for about 4 years during the real estate heydays back in the early 2000s, before the crash of 2008. That's when I got out of it.
And you said remind you about the real estate. Did you already?
Yes, it's a great story about business and how people come into business. One of my good friends went to one of those weekend things at a hotel, learn how to trade stocks. 500 people in the room. They all spent like $5,000 for the 2 or 3 days that they were there. Mm-hmm. And after the event's over, my friend said, Doug, it's like this amazing event. I talked to the promoter. Great event. A lot of people learned a lot of things. And they netted $1 million that weekend after expenses and everything. And you love speaking and you know about real estate. Why don't you do a real estate, weekend boot camps for people and make $1 million? And I looked him square in the eye. I said, Chris, those things don't work. He said, yes, they do. I saw the people there. I was in the room. No, they don't work they work for the promoter. Sure, he made money. What about the people? I said, you know what happens on Monday after the weekend's over? They go back and go back to their lives. They don't do anything. It's, people just, they're in their set ways and their habits. So he said to me, why don't you design something that works then? I said, all right. A week later, came back with a 1-page business plan, which was, in-person training, 10 weeks of class, homework, and nobody graduates this real estate investment school until they buy a piece of real estate. You don't graduate. You got to actually buy something. And the classroom was in my own office building that I had purchased, 16 chairs in there. And he's doing the math, right? He's a business guy, like 16 people, 10 weeks of classes, looking at the numbers. Doug, this isn't going to make any money. And I said, that wasn't the assignment. You said design something that works. It works for the people. All right. So I had these small classes. I did, 4 to 6 classes a year. It wasn't big money, but I built up a strong following of real estate investors in Chicago. And a couple years later, I did do a very large event. I had about 300 or 400 people in a 1-hour seminar, not a whole weekend. It was free for them to attend. But I had just recently purchased a 20-unit apartment building. And I'm like, you know what? I could rehab this thing myself and build it. Why don't I go ahead and help my students out from my class and the people in the event, and I will do a raffle. 500 people in the room. Like I'm going to choose 20 people for the 20 units and 20 alternates. And the seminar was about how to rehab an apartment building and turn it into a condo, right? So I taught them how to do it. And then at the end of the event, I said, by the way, all those tickets mean something. There's 20 people who are going to get a condo today. They got to buy it. They got to close on it. If they can't close, we have alternates. And I did $854,000 in one night. So
wow. Tell me how to buy property. How would you buy a property without having a real estate license, or is it better if you educate yourself about a real estate license?
Yeah, great question, because I met Robert Allen years ago and went to one of his events, and actually I was working at a TV studio when I met him, and I was making $3.10 an hour. And after his interview, I went up to him and said, hey, Mr. Allen, this is really cool stuff, the real estate. How do I learn about that? He said, just come to my webinar, come to my seminar this weekend, one of those 2-day seminars in a hotel. It was $5,000. Like, I make $3.10, or I can't afford that. And to his credit, he said, well, why don't you go to the library and check out my book? And so I did. And I read this book cover to cover. I'm 23, 24 years old. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do exactly what he says. Most people, as you get older, you tend to be skeptical and maybe crusty on things. I just did what he said. I purchased millions of dollars of real estate over my career, no money down, zero. I would borrow money from the seller, borrow money from investors, borrow money from the properties. My favorite way to do it. And yeah, being a realtor, oh my gosh, I actually went and got my real estate license just because I want to save some commissions. I went and worked at my real estate. I had one realtor buying properties for me. I went and worked at her office one day for 6 hours and I quit. I'm like, there's no way I want to do this job. You're worth 6% commission. So I had the shortest career as a real estate, as a realtor, 6 hours.
So basically, it's best to go to these seminars or read from the book of Mr. Allen.
Yeah, he's a great teacher. There's plenty of other people out there teaching things. I learned it from a $12.50 hardcover book. Doesn't mean those seminars aren't good. Doesn't mean you can't get better training elsewhere. I just didn't have any money, so I had to just do what he said. The biggest thing to accomplish that, however, is not necessarily the training. The training is, there's the terms used the past few years, information marketing and content is king and all these things. It's not true. Content is free. You could look up on Google right now 1,000 ways to buy real estate, no money down, right? You don't need a book or a course for that. What you need is the confidence, because I was scared. After I read that book, I was scared to make an offer. I was a waiter making, $2 an hour plus tips. And I was trying to buy an apartment building. So I made some fake offers just to practice. And I finally found one that I could get a FHA loan for, and I was able to do that one. But you need confidence and maybe a mentor, someone to help guide you a little bit so you don't get, taken by the sharks.
Is your services free, or your services, how much you charge to be a mentor? Because nothing is free.
Nothing is free. I'm kind of like some of my clients, however. I work with a lot of very successful business owners, and we tend to be much more approachable than people assume. I give out my phone number all the time, my emails all the time. I'm not a celebrity or anything, so I'm happy to help people out. If they abuse it, call me every day, then of course I gotta throttle it back. But if somebody wants to learn about real estate investing or book publishing, I'm happy to hop on a call and tell them what my opinion is and what's worked for me, what hasn't worked. That's easy.
Well said. We're going to move on from that because I'm interested. I'll talk about it after the show. Sure. Tell me about your TV personality. Doing TV, television.
TV, I was behind the scenes for most of my career. In the radio and TV world, I was behind the scenes. I was a guest on a couple of shows here and there talking about real estate or publishing. Television's a funny thing nowadays. Back before the internet was really big, it was a big deal to be in television. And nowadays, when I was growing up, there were 3 channels. Then cable come out, there was 100 channels. Now with streaming and cable and internet, there's unlimited channels. This is a channel, right? So it's called the disintermediation of media. There's thousands of channels, but the population hasn't gone up by 10,000. It's doubled or so. So what that means is you have more opportunities to be on television with smaller audiences.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. You just got to do more of it and be strategic in who you want to be in front of.
Okay. Yeah. So, wow. I'm sorry. Wrong number. Okay. So you are a personal brand specialist, a media insight, and a publisher. Define that and tell me what makes your brand different from the rest.
All right. That's a great question. Thank you for that. There are, dozens and dozens, maybe hundreds of people that do what I do, ghostwriting. There's different levels of publishing in my industry. There's traditional publishers, a thing called hybrid publishing, and self-publishing, where you do it yourself. And what I've learned over the years, doing this for 14 years now, is that entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, they want a book, but they really don't want the book. They want what the book will do for them. So as a ghostwriter publisher, my job is to definitely capture their story, their ideas, their message, and craft it in a way that's compelling. What I mean by that is think about the last great movie you saw. Maybe that Hollywood spent $100 million to hold your attention for 2 hours. Now you go take that same concept into a book. And I'm expected to hold your attention for 4 to 6 hours with ink on paper. No special effects, no stars, just my words. So you better know how to weave and tell a compelling story with tension, conflict, characters, hooks. Things like that are very important in a book. Even a nonfiction book should have a little bit of drama to it to pull the reader through. So as a publisher and ghostwriter, we're very adamant about proper storytelling, making sure that the book is interesting. That's the core tenet of all of our personal branding is storytelling. And that goes through a book, it goes through video, audio, print, live events, speaking, all those things revolve around sharing a good story with someone because, quite frankly, stories is our primary mode of communication. Stories were invented before language, right? Cave drawings. Here's where we go get the buffalo with the spear. There's no words there. They told a story to communicate. It's baked into our DNA. So storytelling is fundamental to everything we do. So we're very passionate about making sure we tell the right story in your book, in your speaking, and in your multimedia presence as well. So it's important to have all those. A book by itself doesn't always work that well. So you need a balanced, media channel of print and video and live events.
Well said. And tell me about the C-suite professionals that you have basically had the business together with, such as Apple, NASA, P&G, Touchstone Pictures, Louis Vuitton stamps, and NFL, Bank of America. Tell me about all of them in situation.
Oh my God. Yes. How much time do we have?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll make it work.
I'll tell you about a few of them. There's most entrepreneurs, especially in my space, I'll just start with the publishing, ghostwriting world. A lot of people say, hey, a book is a business card. And they push or convince a young entrepreneur to get a book out there and be an author, because an author still has a higher status than a non-author because it's hard to write a well-done book. We'll cover that in a minute. So as my businesses progress through the years, we've attracted higher and higher and higher quality clients. I started out, I wrote books for anybody, but like our second client was on The Biggest Loser, Tony Webker, the guy right there. Okay. Over the period of time, we started talking to people that ran companies. This former CMO of Starbucks Asia, Emily Chang, the founder of stamps.com, Mohan Ananda, and a lot of people that aren't necessarily public figures, but they've made big impact in their industry. I call them slightly famous. So working with those guys has been an absolute dream because we do charge quite a bit for our ghostwriting, publishing, our speaking packages, and they can afford it. It's not a big deal to them to drop, 30, 40, 50 grand on something like this because they know the value of what their personal brand can do for them. I have one company, it's a 140-person consulting company in Israel and USA, does very well for himself. When he spent 10 years thinking about and trying to write his book and couldn't pull it off because he knew it had to be done right. He told me on his very first call with me, he knew it would get done, and we did it in 9 months. 140-person consulting company, his business went up 25% in the very first year because he was a published author. So Viomar is the name of the company. You wouldn't necessarily know it, but it's a decent consulting company. I did a book for the VP of Pepsi, Procter & Gamble executives, Nat Geo stars. One of our clients, the guy with stamps, also did a little invention when he worked at NASA. Maybe you've heard of this invention. It's called GPS.
I like how you said it. Oh my God.
I'm looking at his resume. I'm like, you invented GPS? He goes, yeah, I worked with 5 guys there. We invented that thing back to NASA, the military at the time, and made it public. I'm like, okay. And when he first signed on with us, I'm like, okay, we'll work on your book. He sent me his resume. His resume was 2 pages long, single spaced. I mean, he's just done so much, from founding stamps.com, inventing GPS, and a bunch of other things. He's done 3 IPOs. And a 4th one recently. So yeah, he's and he's like you mentioned about, or I mentioned about being accessible. He's not only our client, he's also a mentor. Because when I get a business question, I'll ask him. You know, he's done hundreds of nights. He sold stamps. He went public with stamps, and then a private equity group bought it back last year for $6.6 billion. So he knows a little thing about business and finance for sure.
Okay, I see that you're also an accomplished writer, as you already said, and you contributed to Entrepreneur Magazine, the Chicago Tribune, which I am in, and the Daily Herald, MSN Money, Yahoo. Tell me about all of these wonderful magazines.
Well, when this dates back to when I was doing real estate and the publishing industry, right? And one of the things that was important at the time, it's changed a little bit since then, but I'll start with the historical aspect. Is when you start a business, it's a one-on-one relationship with you and your first customer. But at some point, they need to know who you are, and you may not be able to talk to everybody. So there's three types of media available to all of us. There's earned media, owned media, and paid media. I can't talk about paid media too much because I don't do that. But if you could run ads on any platform now, Spotify or Facebook or the Herald, you can run ads to attract clients. Earned and owned media is also kind of funny because nowadays everybody's got a YouTube channel, everybody's got a Facebook account, LinkedIn. Those are actual channels, media channels. It's social media, but it's a media channel. Those are owned kind of by you, but not really. I mean, they're owned by those big companies, but you got your own channel there. Earned media is where the thing I think you're getting to is like, if I can become a writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, which I did a few years ago, that has a higher level of status than saying I wrote a blog on my own website, right? It used to be a blog was a cool thing. And I read recently, there's one blog for every 7 people on the planet. It's over 1 billion blogs now. So how unique and cool is that to be a blogger? Not that great, unless you got a huge audience. But earned media, being on Entrepreneur Magazine, Daily Herald, a TEDx stage, a best-selling author on Amazon, or those are things that have a little bit higher status because you had to earn it. So paid, you can buy your way on almost any list. Owned, you got your own media platforms, but earned media has a little more cachet to it than the other channels.
Tell me about your book, 7 Secrets of Broadcasting Radio Excellence.
Whoa, this is a fun one. It's so funny. When I spent my years in radio, it was fun. Number one, I had a producer. I just showed up and we had a nice chat like this. Business came in from it. It was really well positioned. And when that era ended, I looked at podcasting back in, 2010, 12, or in that range. And I'm like, I started recording some interviews with some of the people I knew. And then I'm looking at this file. I'm like, I got to edit this and upload it. I'm like, oh, forget it. This is a pain in the butt. I had a producer before. I don't want to do all this work. So I let it go. And I talked to a consultant, 5-6 years ago. And she said to me, Doug, don't look at podcasting the way you looked at your old radio days. It's not about big audience and ads and big audience. It's about lead generation. And I said, what do you mean by that? What if you just interviewed the people you'd like to work with? And that's it. Who cares if you got published? Just getting on the phone with them would be enough for you. I'm like, oh, heck, you're right. I did 2 interviews today for my podcast. And one of the guys is an Inc. 5000 CEO. I learned a lot interviewing him, and he might be coming to my event. So I believe that, you can use the media channels for publicity, obviously. Personally, I use it to meet cool people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And tell me, where do you see yourself going in the future?
Oh, boy. Lots of places. I haven't been to Europe too much, but I'd like to go to Europe. Business-wise,
Yes.
we are doing some kind of fun things. AI is all the rage now.
Yeah.
People have asked me many times, right? Doug, is AI going to affect your ghostwriting business? And when it first came out last year, I was nervous for about a month. Like, oh man, I think people got to write books and not have to use our professional journalists and writers now. And then I started using it a little bit, and my worries went away because as much as it can assemble words and phrases from the internet, it can't get in my heart. It can't capture my story or my personality that well. It's a tool like an Excel sheet. And we use AI as a publishing company, maybe to spin some variety of titles or to help us with a framework or an outline. But the actual writing, crafting of a story and message and putting emotion in it, I'm sorry, but we still use human beings for that. I mean, can you imagine being the CEO of a $100 million company and saying, yeah, a robot wrote my book? No. These guys and gals, Rolls-Royce is still in business for a reason. I mean, robots have been around for a long time building cars. Rolls-Royces are still built by hand. Why? Because people value quality. So as our company has matured, we've grown with it. And because of that, we use AI lightly. But our biggest thing that we're doing right now, quite frankly, especially post-pandemic, is meeting people in person. So we're doing we're doing visionary roundtable events twice a year. These are live events. There's no cost to the CEOs. They come there and they network and they share and they mastermind. And the second day we do some media stuff with them. But primarily meeting people in person is my biggest passion that I've missed the past few years. All this Zoom and digital and online stuff is fast. It's efficient, but you can't beat meeting somebody in the flesh, having dinner with them, shaking their hand. It's slow, but it builds more trust when you meet somebody in person. So that's what we're going. We're going into old school stuff. I'm doing handwritten letters, postcards, Christmas gifts, and in-person meetings. That's our direction.
Cool and well said. And I had another question for you. If you had to give advice to an entrepreneur that want to be in your spot, what would it be, family man?
Wow. I would start with questions as opposed to statements, number one. So the first thing to do is ask them questions about, what do you want, why? And the most important thing that people need to understand is we all, myself included, we all have limiting beliefs. Even if we're like on fire, had a great week, we still have that, devil on our shoulder saying the wrong thing. So the biggest thing a person can do is become self-aware of their thoughts. And I catch myself on this all the time. Having a bad day, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in a funk. Sometimes I've canceled calls because I know I'm not going to be on my A game. So understanding and being self-aware is the very first thing I would recommend anyone to do. And then the second thing is to, if you're young and can afford this, I was talking to a client of mine. He's got a $300 million company. We're talking about hiring people, what we've gone through. We've got a small company. We have 8 employees. But we're talking about if somebody came to me and said, I have no skills in what this job requirement is, but I have passion, purpose. I'll work for free for a month to show you how smart I am and how aggressive I am. What CEO isn't going to hire that person? I would instantly. I'm like, okay, come on, work for free for a month, prove your worth. I'll give you the training. I've done that with plenty of my employees where they spend the first month not working. They spend the first month going through the training courses that we have. And so self-awareness is important, and moxie, being enthused and not being like, oh, I don't want to work for less than, $20 an hour. I don't want to work, weekends. It's just maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know, but anybody who's aggressive and wants to get ahead, you got to give to get. So give first and get later.
Well said. Thank you so much, Mr. Crowe, for joining my show. Stay on the line for a second. You guys out there, listen to what he has to say. It's very informative and educational. Y'all take care, be safe, and I'll see y'all next time.